where she's planted, where she's called. She grows wild. She grows wild. Rooted in truth, rising high. She grows wild.
Okay, so today I wanted to talk about gender roles then versus now, and like the understandings, or I guess the traditions or assumptions that people put on certain genders to do certain things. So for instance, like, who's cooking? Who's the cook? Who should be cooking?
Most people think women should be the cook. And I found that my generation, most of them were. But there was times when the men, and they were good cooks. Very seldom did I find a man that was a bad cook. I have known some women to be bad. But it generally, in my day, if a man was a cook, he was a good cook. Like I said, my cousin cooked he was in the Navy, and he cooked. And he was the one that did my cake for our 25th wedding anniversary. I didn't want nobody to touch it. It was so pretty. It had, about 3 layers, but there was a waterfall on it. And it freaked me out.
That's some freaky shit.
It was. I just could not. The waterfall had a pump to it where you really couldn't tell it, but the table that he had it on, the tablecloth, I found out later, had a hole in the bottom. And you didn't see all the apparatus, you know.
Yeah.
And it was just out of sight. I didn't want nobody to cut it.
Do you think that people, I've found in a number of instances that a lot of people like to reference the Bible for status quo. You know, well, women are supposed to do this and men are supposed to do that.
It was never put to me like that, as a Bible quote or anything. I'm trying to think of any kind of reference back then that I heard.
Well, back then, a lot of women were actually in the home where it was
more.
More, okay.
Yeah. A lot of women didn't work. I heard people saying when World War I took all the men, that's when the women started working. I don't know, this is just hearsay. My mother never worked. My grandmother was by herself, and she always worked. What bothered me was the fact that after I saw my grandmother just about every weekend, sometimes during the week, thank God. But what bothered me was when I grew up, got a little older, and saw to it that she would bring my mother the money, you know. Mama's sitting on her butt doing nothing because, like I said, I've been cooking and cleaning since I was 8. Out of the people in our village, she was one of the few that didn't do anything. That's when a lot of women started working in factories.
Mm-hmm.
And my friends' mothers, I know one of them worked at General Motors, and no, there was more than one. But a lot of them did housework.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my grandmother did.
Did you ever see or know of like any men in like the home setting that actually prepared, say for instance, like dinner?
Not really.
No.
No. Most of the men worked somewhere. I'm trying to think. I don't remember really too many men that did cook.
So as far as the working, as far as women working, what was the attitude towards women working?
I really don't know if it was a negative or a positive,
Mm-hmm.
because I was too young
Mm-hmm.
to really grasp any negative or positive.
What about
I
you?
just knew. What about me?
What about you?
I was too young to.
No, when you start working, what was?
Oh, when I started working.
Paint the picture for me. What's going on?
I don't know why men didn't want women working back then. Just hearing bits and pieces. I think they were afraid that the women would do what they did.
What they did?
You know, man, it don't. I probably shouldn't say that, but you know, men don't let nothing go. You know, if it's there, and if they have never, if it was offered to them, never turned it down. They just don't do that. You know.
So they thought that you
and I think,
about to make
yeah,
some money.
I think men
call some shots.
Yeah, I think men actually thought that women would do
what they did.
And a lot of families were messed up behind that. And you know, men, you know, there's some squirrely MFs. It's okay for them, but it ain't okay for nobody else.
What you say?
You know, and after I found out that that's what was happening, when I decided, well, when your grandpa went to work with the hotel he was working for, they decided to open another one down there in another town. So there was about 10 of them, 8 or 10 of them, that went. Now they went to a city that was full of women. Didn't have that many men. So I found out, I called it, I said it was pussy a go-go. And like I said, if a man finds that there's 5 to 1, they want their 5 and the other man's 2, you know.
I think we would be like that too if it was.
If we could.
Yeah, if we could. Hell
Yeah.
yeah.
But they ain't gonna never let us do that.
Shit.
No, they ain't gonna never ever let us do. I was
Make it 10.
had baby number 2,
Mm-hmm.
and we sitting over across the street. There was like 2 houses, so it was a vacant. I say the space for about 2 houses, but it was vacant, and they were sitting over there. So I took mine and went across the street, and a lady come and helped me with Michael. Took Michael. So he was sitting there, and I think this is when I finally heard some strange shit. You know, this lady is saying, look at that little bastard. He walks like him. And the woman says, well, mine look more like him than yours. And I'm saying, what is she talking about? You know, I'm the dumb heifer in the crowd, you know. And so this lady down there must have been, I'd say about 12 or 13 of us. But I'm the dumb one that don't know nothing. I'm the one that ain't from there, okay? So they asking crazy questions. That's where a lady asked me, how do you do abortions?
No.
And I'm looking at her and I'm saying, these is mine. You know, I had these. And she said, yeah, but you from Fort Wayne. I said, well, do you think if I knew how?
Shit.
And this bitch tells me because I was from a bigger city, and they about 35 or 40 minutes from Indianapolis, city twice as big as I live in.
It made sense to her.
And I told her, I said, y'all go there to get your hair done. You ain't asked none of them how to do it? And I said, well, the one woman said, well, you know we don't know, said, there's 3 in your block that have babies by the same man. So I know she lying, you know. I'm saying, what is you talking about? And she said, well, I heard them saying this one looked more like him than black. But what it was, Purdue University is in Lafayette. And the boys would come, old enough or not, if they could get away with it. The tavern was right on the corner. The only black tavern. So there was a lot of pro ball that, hell, they didn't graduate, you know, but this stuff, they come down and the women are right there. They gonna give them anything they want, because, you know, it ain't that often. It's that few men.
Yeah.
You know. But I learned a whole lot. And like I had kids, I wasn't able to go to the taverns. I wasn't able to leave my kids with no mama or nothing like that, you know. So my man, who was bartending, I didn't know what the hell he was doing, at the time, didn't think about it. I really didn't think about it until I come back. I went back home, and he and I would just ride the trains back and forth because the guy that I lived next door to when I was coming up was, I didn't know what he was, but I just knew he worked on the train.
Mm.
And we had been told, but like I said, when you're small, you don't know what the shit that all that stuff means. And first time I got on that train, he says, like scared me to death. He says, "And what is this?" And I had Michael in a blanket. He was that small, and I said, "This is my baby." He said, "Oh." And so when I got ready to get off, he handed me a schedule. He said, "Don't get on unless I'm working." And I said, he said, "Just, this is when you get on and don't buy no ticket."
Mm.
So I told Gerald what he said, and Gerald says, "Well," and the man said, I said, "Well," he asked me, "Are you married?" I said, "Yes," but I lied because I wasn't married then. I was going back to school.
Mm-hmm.
Getting married, the principal of my school came and told me if I did not get married, I could come back to the school. Otherwise, if I got married, I'd have to go downtown where that schooling was. I don't know what it was or nothing, but it was in my head. He hadn't graduated. He quit. So there was no way I was going to do the same thing. I really never thought about marriage. Marriage wasn't a thing that I even thought about. And so I just knew that's what I was gonna. Who come in the door?
That was Trey going out.
Oh, going out.
So what was the conversation or the thought, or what happened to where you decided, okay, I'm getting a job?
My husband, no, he came home, gave me some money for rent. I was staying with my mother. And so I said, "You got $10 more? I need $10 more or something today. I gave you everything I got. The $10 I got is for me." And I said, "Oh." He said, "You look shocked." Well, he had never told me no before. But after he left, I understood, or at least I thought I did. Then I got to thinking about it. I was pregnant with your daddy, number 3. And I got 3 here. If he ain't got, no more now, what's going to happen? Later on, I thought, oh, God, I might need something for these kids or something. All kind of shit went through my mind. And I chewed that tobacco and chewed that tobacco, and oh, God, I said, no, this ain't going to work. To me, if you ain't got it now, the next one's coming. Now, we married now. I got married, I was pregnant with Terry. Didn't know I was pregnant with Terry, but I was. And so he said, we got to get married now. I said, no, we don't. Look, and my grandma, I said, oh, Jesus, I might have to go through this again with Grandma, because with Michael, she quit speaking to me. So I said, he called me up and he said, when you coming this way with Terry? And when I did go, he said, I want you to go somewhere with me. So we got on the bus and went downtown, and I'm saying, oh, there's a woman's shop. He said, I want you to go right here on the corner with me. And I looked up and I said, jewelry store? He said, yeah, I want to show you something. Wedding rings never even rung a bell to me. And the lady, he said, I'd like to speak to you again. The lady come over. She said, oh, yeah, I remember you. And she went to put these, and I'm sitting up there, what is them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I ended up, it was a wedding set. Yeah. And
For him and you?
no, just me.
Just you?
Just me. And I didn't even know how they went, you know. And the lady said, I said, oh, can I wear them? Not really thinking what they was. Because I didn't know. Mama didn't have none on. Wasn't that many women that I knew that mamas, they didn't have them on. And I don't know why, but you just didn't see them with wedding rings on. So I don't know whether they came in style or with mine or what, but older women, you just didn't see them, so I didn't know what the shit it was. So I thought he was going to put on me and we just walk. Lord, and that man, it was so funny because it was way back then. I think we got the two for wasn't even $100. Yeah, and the girl, she worked in the babies and cleaned the utensils and the needles and all that shit for women having babies. And she would do, they had circular needles, and that's what he did. I mean, she did, and she pierced my ears. So that's what I thought. And he got me a pair, not knowing, but there was a pair of earrings. They were gold and they had an ivory. And I lost one of them, I think I did, but I think about that one pair of earrings. Then I went and bought me some, not knowing that I couldn't wear the cheap earrings before. But I bought another cheap pair, and boy, that man had a fit. You have to have gold, that's what they said, and you can't wear this cheap stuff, you know, so.
I'm going to circle you back to your job. Was you married when you got your first job?
Yeah, I was. 'Cause I got married before Terry. This was after your daddy was born. And I decided, staying with Mama. But I took a girl, she asked me, because I lived next door to, how was that, Gerald's sister's husband's aunt.
Okay.
And her husband, Underwood, used to drink a lot. And she said, you better be careful. You come around that corner and hit that baby, I'll kill you. And she used to tell me, anytime you want to borrow that car, now she couldn't drive nothing. And she would come and get me and ask me to take her to the store, take her here, take her there. I ain't never had no driver's license. My cousin Harold made me drive from Wabash to Fort Wayne. I was 14. So she asked me, could I drive? Well, I wasn't lying, I could, because Harold saw to it that I could drive. But I had never had no, but I guess that's the way everybody out there. And then a friend of mine, Charles Hayden, his mama, daddy, they had a car. Now, him and her both worked for General Electric. Yeah, back then. And then there was another lady that lived behind us. She worked for General Electric. But as I heard things, it was because of the military, where the men went. And then if they weren't in, like Mr. Hayden, Mr. Hayden and Yeager, Mr. Yeager, they worked at the factories too. But I had Raymond. I took this girl, asked me to take her and look for a job. And I have thought about her all these years because I took her to apply for a job. Somebody was telling me that they was out there at state school. And I took her. So the lady said, do you want to? I said, no. I said, my husband don't want me to work. And so the girl was taking so long, so the lady come and asked me again. I said, no. And so she come again, said they are hiring. So I fills out the thing just merely to get the woman off my back, just not to say nothing else about a job. I didn't even know what they did. And it was so funny because the woman gave me the job, and Loretta, I can't even remember the girl's last name. All I can remember is she went back to Alabama.
Oh.
And that girl has been on my mind ever since. I don't know whether she would have been 3 years older than me, I think it was. But she was staying with some aunt 2 doors down that was friends with Annie next door. And but she never got the job. The woman comes back, tells me, can I be here at 3? Can you be to work this evening at 3 o'clock? I said, can I do what? I said, no, lady. I said, I can't. And this was like in the middle of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, or something like that. I said, no. I said, the lady said, I tell you what, I'm going to hold this for a week. And anytime, she gave me the little number to call and all that shit. I thought about that and thought about it. And back then, we started out, I think it was $205 a month. That was in 61. Yeah. Because your daddy was born in 61. So he was born in May. This must have been like the middle or it was after July 4th or something along in there. I thought about it. I went down there, and because it was like very seldom was it 2 days where we wouldn't, because I would go and then he would come, and I'd stay at the hotel sometime, but now I got 3 babies. So I ain't liking putting my 3 babies on the floor. If I stayed in the hotel, we'd have the suite, and Gerald could get a crib for me to put. He would get a crib and a thing where we'd have both kids in the one bed, Well, that wasn't so bad, but taking all them babies, that's all they was, is up and down the, So, my mind told me that nigga couldn't even give me the $10. That's what I kept thinking about. And so I decided to tell the lady, yeah, So I said, well, I'd start. And I think it was after the 4th of July. And so I would go down on my day off. I'd go that night, be off the next day. And then Gerald would come and I'd be off. And one day, it was going fine for a while. And one day he came. I said, oh, I wasn't expecting you. He said, yeah, I know. You off tomorrow? I said, am I what? And I said, what you mean? He said, Bev, let's not go through all of this. He said, my sister called and told me that my wife was working at state school. I said, she did what? He said, Bev, let's not go through all of this. He said, you working? I said, yeah, I'm working.
Oh.
He said, and is there a reason? I said, well, I asked you for $10. He said, $10 made you go get a job. I said, we got more kids now. He said, oh. I said, and then plus Mitzi. He said, no, you can't add her into the equation. So that ain't even going to work. He said, because I ain't done that for a long time. I said, you ain't paid her? He said, I don't know why you so shocked. I ain't had no money to take care of. I'm trying to do for y'all. And he went giving me this long speech about I wasn't supposed to be working. He gonna do blah, 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 blah. I said, hush. He said, okay, Miss James. Now he mad, And I'd never seen him mad, so he shocked the shit out of me. So he stayed 2 days during the week, and I'm saying, you're not going back? No. So I called in and told him that I couldn't make it, my kid was sick or something. So he's telling me about how he didn't want me to work and blah, blah, blah. But I never got a reason why, So I said, okay, I'll think about it. He says, no, I don't want you to work. I said, why? Give me a good reason. And we got 3 kids. And he said, I'm just going to have to get another job. I said, no, what's wrong with me working? But it was something I have never fully understood. I did find out a lot of women that did work for a state school Their husbands did too. I never figured that out, why their husbands wouldn't go and get a better job.
What do you think about you working at the bank?
When I moved to Lafayette, when I did that, my friend, her brother cleaned up at night. And we was all sitting talking outside one day. And he was sitting over there and his wife was sitting there and I'm sitting here and Gerald there. And he says, you ought to come down there to the bank and get a job. And I said, I can't. He don't want me to work. And he said, oh, he don't? And so Gerald said, don't be putting no shit in her head. So he said, man said, I asked him, because there ain't no black down there. Ain't no colored. Ain't no Negroes working down there. And Gerald said, well, I don't care. I don't want her to work. So I said, well, I'm going to have to do this on my own. You know, what I did was, there was another place I had called before. Gerald didn't know nothing about that one either. So I went down there like 2 days after we had all been outside talking. And the lady told me to sit here. The door opened and she told me to sit over there on the side. So the man came in and said, Geraldine, I think I got that position filled. Said, I'm waiting on a Beverly James. My stupid ass, or no, it wasn't stupid. I said, I'm Beverly James. That hunky looked around the corner and saw my black ass and told her, oh, I think we got it already filled. So she turns red as a beet and tells me she's so sorry and I really don't know what to say to you, because evidently you were qualified or he wouldn't have said what he said. So I said, that was the first time I had ever that was my first encounter with being prejudiced against. You know, because like I said, I've been around white folks all my life. I had never had a bad experience. Even when I worked that little time at state school, nobody never, and most of the bosses out there were white. And that just blew my mind when that happened to me. And so I told Gerald about it. He said, good. And I said, Gerald, I am not your sit-at-home wife. I can't do it. It just about drove me nuts sitting at home just taking care of babies. You know, nothing to do. And it just, you know, when I was staying with Mama, she had 2 bedrooms. Me and my kids slept in the one. My sister, my brother had went to the Navy. So, it just, I don't know, just sitting, by the time you take care of kids and you know, and I had, it just wasn't my cup of tea. And I sat there and I said, oh my God, how did Mama sit here all the time? And we didn't have a TV. She just sat there in the house. I couldn't do it.
How was your experience at the bank?
Doug told me to go down there. Gerald was telling him, don't tell my wife to blah, blah, blah. And I did. Well, when I had got mad at Gerald because he hadn't come home for about a month. And I'm saying, why? So then all this shit I'm hearing. Okay, well, I can go down and file for divorce. I won't have to be bothered with his ass, you know. I got this all planned out in my head. I went down and filed for divorce from the man that Grandma worked for. And he said, Beverly, your Grandma is just so crazy about, she talks about your husband this and your husband that. And I'm saying, Bob, I want to file for divorce. And he said, Beverly, I don't think I want to be in that. Ain't no telling what Edna's subject to do. You know, and I said, you scared of Edna? He said, yeah, we both are, remember? I said, no, I'm not. This is tall white man talking to me. No, I'm not. No, you know, it won't be the first time Edna quit speaking to me. He said, I tell you what I do. I'll just put it in the paper. I'm saying, well, what's that going to do? He said, well, a lot of times it scares the men into doing the right thing. And I'm sitting up there crazy enough to believe it. So now, Miss Shirley reads it in the paper and tells her mama and everybody else. Calls down and tells him, your wife didn't. First she called and some of the guy I was supposed to have been going with, and the man brought shirts to me. I ironed them, and then I stuck the money down in his pocket so nobody would see. Now, when did the man bring the shirts to me? You know, and if he did all of that, somebody surely saw it, you know. So, Gerald, I said, okay. I said, Gerald, does that make sense to you, being that they told it to you? And he said, well, is that what's going on? I said, look, I ain't asked you about what was going on. So, you know, you straighten up, I straighten up. He says, well, when he went back home, he called me up and he said, you know what, Miss James? I said, what? He said, that other Miss James told me she was going to quit picking.
Sorry.
That other Miss James said she was going to give me money to pay for our divorce.
Well, damn.
And I said, oh, really? Now, I know ain't no divorce been filed, but, you know, I can't tell him that. So he said, but what I'm going to do, I'm going over and get the money from Miss James. I'm going to come to you with a truck. I finally done found a house. It's a 2-sider. Said it's on, Al's is on one corner, and if you go all the way to the other corner, Hartford Street, said that's where the house is. I said, you talking about me and my 3 kids moving. We don't own nothing. We ain't got no furniture for the house, you know. And he says, well, there's 5 rooms in the house. 3 downstairs and 2 upstairs. So we go and buy 5 rooms of furniture. Then he says, oh, by the way, I got a different job. He said, yeah, and I'm making a lot more money than I did at the hotel. I said, oh, when was the bitch going to let you tell me? I don't know where that came from.
Wow.
I don't know where it came from, but it just come out. And he said, okay, Miss James, you can explain that later, you know. And I said, I ain't gonna never explain to you. I don't have to. So he said, well, I'll be there. This was like Thursday night. I'll be there Saturday morning. I'm going to get the money to pay for your divorce. And we getting the hell out of Fort Wayne. And that's how I left.
So, $10
Made me do
a fake divorce and a hating ass sister-in-law paying for it.
No, his mama.
That was his mama?
That was his mama.
Girl, you lying.
Well, that was his mama. They done told her and blah, 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 blah.
And the fake rumor about you giving the nigga some.
And with the whoever the nigga was, I ain't never.
You ain't even iron.
But they didn't know that.
All that got you a bank job.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? After I got the bank job, and it would look like it was so easy for me to get it. You know, I went down there and I talked to Mr. Ebner. I never will forget his name. And he told me your credentials are better than some of them that's working here. My stupid ass, I didn't know what he's talking about.
Uh-huh.
And so he's saying, and I know you this is what you took, bookkeeping.
Mm-hmm.
And which I said, yeah, I did. And so he says, well, I need a bookkeeper. Okay. Well, we had little desk, and you know, the girl had A, B, C, D. I had E, F. And we had little desk, and that's what we worked on, you know, and you write checks, and I had to make sure, you know, that's what we did. So he told me, you're to be proud of your grades. Well, I knew what they was, but I didn't know about, you know, we didn't hear about you need to have a B average or something like. We didn't hear shit like that. All I know is I don't ever remember having a black person in none of my grades. I was always with, well, the guy that retired from being a principal at a school about 3 years ago. Whenever I would see him, Mama was the one that did the algebra and the trigonometry and the geometry, all that shit. So I had 5 basketball players. And one day, Mama did the algebra and geometry. I couldn't do none of the shit, but she was the one, and the one that taught Michael. But they had changed the way they did it. I came up with the right answer. And so the teacher stood up to class and he pounded on the thing and he said, Beverly Jones, Dan Howell, he went around all that little corner. Somebody is copying off of somebody in that little corner over there. Y'all got all the good answers. And I have to fail you because you didn't get the way. You're not doing it the new. So I said, well, my mother said you were her teacher. And he said, who was your mother? And I said, Frances, oh no, her name wasn't Jones then, her name was Frances Logan. He said, oh, well, yeah. So that's who did it for you? I said, yeah, that's who did it for me. He says, well, you tell her that I would like for her to come so I can show her. He said, and you know what? A lot of people I wouldn't say this to, but it was quick for her to catch on. I said, well, then how do you know? He said, because she done showed you. So I goes home and I tells Mama she got to go to school. The man said, when school lets out, you could come. So, gets Mama. It was so funny. Got Mama to the school. I'm telling Gerald, I said, oh, I don't know how I'm going to get Mama. I guess we had to catch a bus. You want me to find her? I said, no, fool. You can't find nothing for me. You know. And it was so funny because I didn't know I was pregnant. And Mama didn't know nothing about him. And so Mama went, learned how to do it, told me how, and got up in class and said, Beverly, are you and your team ready to retake the test? And all of us sitting there saying, we didn't. And the man said, don't even try it. I know. He said, look, and the basketball team won state in 58. And that was how, because all of them would have had to get off the team. Yeah. And so and the man told me at the bank, said, your grades are a lot better than a whole lot of them. And I said, oh, really? He said, yes, they are. So, not knowing, that's what he told all of them, the tellers and everybody, when they had the meeting, that the first black is going to come. She is not a token, as they call them. She's going to be, and this is what the white girl told me, she's going to work with y'all. And you know, as you know, whoever is the head person, bookkeeper. Well, bookkeepers had to go down and relieve the tellers for an hour, their lunch. So when I first had to go do that, after work that Friday, there was Fridays that we had to work over too, but after work that Friday, they told me what I was going to have to do and to run through what the tellers did. I had to count the money, get the, and I got that. Well, it was about a month before I had to really do it. And it was different. And it was amazing how some of the white people would come up and would go past me as a teller. Then I heard Dan saying, oh, she's not busy, And then I would hear Susan say, she's not busy. So that would make them come back. Well, now I got this nasty looking thing. Ooh, where'd he come from? And stunk? Oh my God, that man stunk so bad. And he came and asked me, he wanted like 3 or 4 rows of dimes and some rows of quarters, and we never did know what he did with the money, where he got it from or anything, but he'd have this old check and it would never have no name on it that we knew anything about, but he would put it in his account, give him his change, and then he got well, Beverly, how many, they say you got kids. I said, yes, I do. I have 3 boys. And he would say, here, give me a $10 bill. Buy your kids some candy. I said, oh, $10 worth of candy, which back then was a whole lot, So he'd give me $10. Well, Dan said, he didn't give Irma no money. I said, I ain't got nothing to do with that. I said, I ain't got nothing to do with that. I said, and then Irma ain't got no kids. And so everybody was saying, that's your boyfriend. I said, call him what you want to. The man died. They found $150,000 under his bed. So now they saying, did he leave you some money? And all they just went to talking. I said, no, he ain't left me no money. And so I said, Lord, I wish he would, you know.
left you something, huh?
Yeah, but you know, the thing of it was, he wasn't really that old when he died. He was more sick than anything else. And
you got it?
yeah, he didn't leave me no money, but I was mad there for a while. I said, damn, I could have had something, you know. Yeah, but
your fake boyfriend.
Yeah, my fake boyfriend. Then your daddy got sick, and the black folks in town didn't want to help me. They afraid they was gonna catch something. Back then, for the they had to get the measles. They had to get shots. The kids had to get shots, and my kids got them, but Raymond was the only one that got sick. I took him to the hospital. Which was a block away across the street from Al's. They sent me home. Brought him back, laid him on the couch, and he's bending backwards and burning up. And I said it had to have been God. Grandma called me, and I said, oh, Grandma, I'm so glad you called me. I said, my baby is dying and blah, blah, blah. And she's saying, what are you talking about? And I told her, and she tells me, get off the phone. So I got off the phone. She said, I'll call you back. Not knowing what she was doing, but the other lawyer, Miss Jackson, her husband he was a state senator, but he was a lawyer, and their son was taking his internship in Lafayette. So I'm sitting up there trying to figure out about my baby is dying, and oh God, I was a mess. And I had just brought a cold towel and put all over him and everything, and this knock on the door. And I go to the door, and this guy opens the screen door and tells me, are you Miss Edna's granddaughter? And it was just blah, 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 blah. You know, I'm hearing nothing he's saying. And he grabbed my arm and he said, Beverly. And then he pushed the door open, saw Raymond laying there, grabbed Raymond, out the door he go. So I'm saying, who are you? Who are you? And he says, I'm so-and-so Jackson. That's all I heard. So come on, we got to get to the hospital. So now my other two kids, they running behind me. There's some people out here about 3 houses down, and I'm saying, watch my kids till Gerald get home. I got to take this one to the hospital. Oh God, I'm so upset. Don't know what the hell I'm doing. Don't know who this white man is that's got my son. And oh God, I'm about to have a fit. And we runs all the way to the hospital. We goes through the emergency room, gets on the elevator, and he's saying, come on, come on, come on. I'm running as fast as I can. We gets up to the floor, and he says, I need a room. And they telling him to go down, you know, blah, blah. And I'm just following behind him, about out of breath, about ready to die. I was, got that boy in the room. He put him in the bed. He went to taking off his clothes. Raymond's up there just shaking. Scared me. I didn't know what to do, what to say. And I'm still saying, you say you who?
4 miles later.
No. and all I can do is cry. That's all I could do. And then he on the phone and yes, and his temp is this. Ain't took no temp. I ain't seen him take no temp, you know. But anyways, and he's saying, and he needs to be tended to right now. So now we got this black lady that I had heard worked there. I didn't know, I had never seen her, but they told me that she worked and about ran that floor, you know. And I said, here comes this woman from down there, and Raymond's shaking like I don't know what, burning up. And she's got this bucket of ice, and I can see it's a bucket of ice. And she says, get back, baby. And I said, huh? And so she at the foot of the bed and throws that ice on Raymond, and you know, and I looked, and water. He was just that hot that it just turned into water. Oh, Jesus, now I'm crying more. I don't know what to do, how to do. I can't get my husband. I can't talk to nobody. I was a mess. And finally this doctor came in and picked him up. They changed his sheet and all that stuff, and they had the rubber on top of this blanket. I mean, the mattress. Yeah, and I'm saying, what is wrong with him? What's the matter? And the man said, I think he has spinal meningitis. I didn't even know what the hell that was. Spinal meningitis. Said he is very, very sick. I said, they've sent me away from here twice. Well, you know, that's what they did for black folks, you know. You come, and the one that the black folks did go to was the one that was way up there. Well, now this one's in the black neighborhood.
Shut up.
Across the street from Al's Tavern.
Well, damn.
And I'm saying, but this one's in the neighborhood. Why I gotta go way up there? I said, oh my God. So then the black lady came back and told me, said, he's the third one. I said, really? He said, yeah, there's 2 white ones that are here. And him said, he's the only black one. Well, when it was all over, there was 10 kids, this spinal meningitis, from them shots. Yeah. And so after Raymond he was in there about a week. And then one day, a lady, I was out in the hall, just walking the hall, because he was asleep. And this lady tells me, if our babies die, we get to sue somebody or something. I said, baby, I don't want the money. I want my child, you know. And she says, well, he's my 7th kid. And I said, if he die, you gonna miss him. And it bothered me because it was like she was saying, if he died good, I get some money, you know. And I've hated her ever since because that's what I felt she had in her head, you know. Yeah, but after that, I told Gerald, oh, none of the black folks around, not even my babysitter, would keep my kids. So
once they found out that your other one had...
No, because my babysitter, her grandchild had it also. You know. They didn't want to catch it, you know, that you niggas, yeah. So the one, my friend, her husband was Irish, and they hate black folks, but he was a sheriff. And she had him to come to my house and get my boys, my other 2, and her mother watched my kids while I was at the hospital with Raymond. Yeah, and it was amazing, and they were white.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and but it blew my mind that the black folks there wouldn't help me no more than what they did. Yeah, and then I told Gerald, I'm going home. I'm ready to go home. I said, no, I can't do these white folks. Can't do these black folks. Shit, no. I mean, there was a girl, we lived in a double house, and she wouldn't even watch my kids. So, no, no.
Tell me about the lady at the bank. I gotta hear that story one more time. Miss Skelly.
The girl, she had that psoriasis. Yeah, and it was so funny because in her booth, it would be everywhere, you know. Her skin be done dropped everywhere, and I got to go to the bathroom, and I'm going in as she's coming out. And I said, oh, and she said, I'm glad I beat you.
Ooh, bitches.
And the little lady back there that would speak to me when she wanted to, little evil ass white woman, she went and told. She heard it.
She might have just been like that with everybody.
I don't know, but I knew she was like that with me. Mildred was her name. But I'd speak to her every day. You know, whenever I'd see her, just like I did everybody else. Then there was
Millie went and told, huh?
She went and told. She went and told. And so, next thing I know, we got to have a meeting. Well, no, he called me down, you know, and then told me to sit over there, and I said, well, I've got to go to the restroom. So I don't know how he called them, but anyways, when I get back, everybody down there looking crazy because the bank had closed, you know. And he went to tell them about how most of them in here, their grades wasn't near as good as mine, and that stuff like that couldn't happen, you know.
Oh, you say a little snide.
Yeah, yeah, and we aren't gonna have that kind of mess in here, you know. And so everybody is saying, I don't do it, I don't do it, I don't do it. He said, I don't care who did it. I know what was said, what was done, and this can't happen no more. So he told them, just like before, that's when I heard again about they had this meeting before I came to work to let them know that I was black and I was this, that, the other, and had better grades than most of them in there. So the one white guy, he used to say, come here, Miss Smarty, but I never knew what he was talking about, you know. And I said, if you say it again to me, we're going to have a problem. So he quit saying it, you know. Yeah. Yeah, but them folks is right crazy when they want to be.
It's funny because you don't hear those stories of decency.
Yeah.
A lot of times, you know, like, okay, the people came and got your kids. The Irishman probably played with your damn kids.
Yeah, and you know, he was a sheriff. Yeah. And she would come to work, and she had latched onto me right quick. And she would tell me, she had done told me about him and stuff, and I didn't know. You know, I didn't know no Irishman as I know of, you know. And all I know is Gerald said he knew her because every Christmas we had parties. And he knew her. So she knocked on the door and said, I come after your boys, so y'all got your hands full. and then told him, and he said thought he knew who she was. Yeah, but and it was so funny because no clothes was sent, so her mama and them, they bought clothes.
Oh, dang.
Mm-hmm, bought clothes for us.
And that's really what you're supposed to do, but
And then I said, ooh, I'm glad they did take them, because my poor kids wouldn't have had nothing, had them other folks took them.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then even the man, that sat down with the department again and said, no, we can't
have this.
We're not gonna behave like that.
And he told them that, And it was so funny because, like, once a month, all of a sudden, they told me I was the ringleader. I said, ringleader what? What's the ringleader? So I was the head bookkeeper all of a sudden, because two women quit.
No, you didn't.
And I'm saying, what does that mean? Well, it meant that I was the head bookkeeper, and then we went to different little towns, and nothing looked like me in them towns.
Y'all had to go train?
It was like business meetings.
Oh.
And I guess there was some training, and then we got some training too, because a couple times we went to banks and they had different things that we upgraded to what they was using. Yeah, and we went to one, and nobody wanted to sit down. So their boss told them.
By you?
So their boss told them.
They blatant with it.
Oh, they were back then.
Shit.
Yeah. So their boss told them that he didn't care what anybody did, but their jobs was dependent on it. And folks moved like I don't know what. Yeah, they moved quick then.
How did your husband feel about you working at the bank? I think
Look here.
Might have asked you that. That might have been some good little change, though.
Yeah, oh my God.
Money make niggas act different.
Oh my God.
Okay.
And he was so mad when I told him I wanted to go home. But baby, you working at the bank?
I'm sure he was proud of you, though.
Some guy asked him, because I was making like 20-some cents, and back then it was a lot of money, especially making more than your husband. And he worked for what was called Egyptian Lacquer. I don't know if they still have the place, but they made paint for coffins. So Gerald come home one day and looking all crazy. I said, what's wrong with you? And he said, nothing. So he kept on. It was just the way he was acting and looking. And I said, okay, I'm going to ask you again, what happened? What's wrong with you? He said, told me, sit down, let me tell you a little story.
Yeah.
And this nigga scared of everything. You hear me? And he says, Bev, when we went in today, they had 2 coffins in the middle of the floor. And I said, 2 coffins? I said, all I knew was he worked at Egyptian Lacquer. It never dawned on me it was paint for no coffins, And I said, I'm not understanding what you're talking about. He said, they had 2 coffins in the middle of the floor, babe. And I said, well, what was they doing with them? He said, well, that's the paint, what we make the paint for, to paint coffins. I said, oh, okay, coffins. Never paid them no attention. I'd never been really I think my dad was the second funeral that I knew they went into a place. They weren't burning them up.
Mm-hmm.
And so a coffin ain't nothing I really knew what it was. I remember seeing the coffin, but you generally look at the body.
Right.
Yeah. And so I'm saying, well, that makes no sense, Gerald. What kind of paint do y'all? He said, Beverly, it's called Egyptian lacquer. Oh, okay. So he says that he wasn't the only one that was upset. I said, I know you couldn't have been, but they had them there and they buried them for so long in the ground to see how the paint and the dirt and the weather and all of that. And somehow they had done it like last year and had changed the formula of the paint. Okay. So they done brought the two coffins, you know. And Lord, I said, Gerald, it don't make sense for you to be scared of everything. You just don't know how. I said, yeah, I do. That's why when he picked your daddy up out the coffin, I said, oh my God. That, I never thought he would have done that, but that was his child, you know, and it just blew his mind away, you know. Yeah, so, yeah, but that's what they did. I often wonder if it's still there, but I imagine it still is.